Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to America Decides. There is something sunny and silly about the day after a presidential debate. Now, I've been covering them since 1992, so I have some experience here. What is sunny and silly? Everyone thinks they won. Everyone in the spin room or in the day after commentary is super happy they got their message out or their plans out or that America got to know them better. This, even by the rather elastic standards of modern politics, is self-serving nonsense. In primaries, debates hurt more than they help. If you disappear or stumble on stage, it can cost you. Winning is almost never knowable and even more infrequently durable. Even the cliche debate bingo is a loser. Nobody plays that game. Now, debate drinking games, well, I hear they're still somewhat of a thing. And last night, if someone had small town, single parent, or teachers union, well, they might still be hurting late today. Debates are also ephemeral, none more so than last night, overshadowed as it is today by the booking, fingerprinting, and mugshotting of a former president for alleged crimes against a fair, legal, and certified election. We begin there tonight with CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian in Atlanta, and Scott McFarland right here with me in Washington. Nicole, to you, it has been a very busy day in Atlanta, and there is, for lack of a better term, the main event later. Explain what's going on today so far and what we anticipate later.
Obviously, the big event is the former president's surrender. He announced on Truth Social that he will be surrendering around 7:30 p.m. Eastern tonight here in Atlanta. And, of course, we have been waiting for this surrender all week, although we have seen a number of other defendants turn themselves in short order, most notably the former president's White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, who actually was resisting surrender and had filed an emergency motion to try to delay having to come in because ultimately he wants to move this case out of Fulton County into federal court. That didn't happen. And late today, we saw the first mugshot of Mark Meadows, someone who thus far has really been resistant as far as not only turning himself in, but even being charged in any of these cases involving the former president. So it really was kind of a very surreal moment seeing that photo come down. But that being said, at this point, all the defendants that remain have until noon Friday to turn themselves in. Otherwise, the district attorney could file a warrant for their arrest.
Nicole, let me ask you about the general atmosphere there. Is there a crowd forming of any kind or disposition, pro or con, the former president?
Well, obviously, we are on one side of the jail. There's another entrance a little further down the street. This is where we expect potentially the former president to turn himself in. But there is another area where others have entered, and that's where more of the demonstrators and supporters of the former president have spent the better part of the day. I talked to a few of them about why they're here.
So you don't think the former president did anything wrong?
No, not at all.
Not at all.
He hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't done anything that other people haven't done, other former presidents haven't done.
He's done everything to save our country.
And so those individuals went on to tell me, including that gentleman you heard from there, that they think that this surrender today will only embolden the former president politically, and that it doesn't bother them that this is happening, other than they think it's demeaning that he has to kind of go through this whole process of getting his mugshot taken. But one of them told me even if he is convicted, they still believe that he should be the president in 2024. Even if it means being the president from jail.
And Nicole, one more question. I hate to burden you with so many questions, but there was other news today on terms of a possible trial date. Can you catch us up on that?
Yeah, this was a bit surprising in the sense that District Attorney Fani Willis proposed a new trial date for October 23rd this year. So we're just talking a couple weeks away from now. Originally, she had proposed March 4th, which was a day before Super Tuesday, sandwiched in the middle of the 2024 political calendar. And so that decision to move it up in part came in response to one of the defendants pushing for a speedy trial, Kenneth Chesebro. And so the district attorney said, fine, you want to move this thing up? Let's move it to October 23rd. And a judge late today actually granted that request. In the meantime, we have heard from the former president's attorneys, his new attorney, that he just came on board today, Stephen Sadow, who basically responded to this new trial date, saying that the former president and his legal team oppose it, and they actually want their case severed from Chesebro because they say that they don't want this tried altogether.
Nicole Killian, stand by. Thank you so much for all of those answers. I want to turn now to Scott MacFarlane. So one of the burdens in covering this story, Scott, is that it is so many cases, jurisdictions, and scheduling. And we are, as I understand it, on Monday here in Washington, D.C., going to have something approximating a scheduling snarl, maybe a scheduling trifecta.
It's all so suffocating on the calendars. You've got 4 kinetic cases all breaking out in different jurisdictions at the same time. Monday epitomizes that. You've got 3 big hearings, all happening literally at the same hour. We'll start off in Georgia, in the federal court in Atlanta. Mark Meadows will appear, trying to move his Fulton County racketeering case to federal court. Got to watch that hearing. If he makes anything close to a successful argument, better believe Donald Trump's going to echo it and try to do the same. At that same moment, Trump's lawyers are in the court in Washington, D.C. They're likely to learn the trial date in Jack Smith's 2020 election conspiracy case, a pivotal moment. How fast is that case going to move? By so many accounts, it's the most efficiently built. It could be the most expedient towards a jury. Next door in the neighboring courtroom, Peter Navarro, remember him? The Trump trade advisor, still trying to process that contempt of Congress case for defying the House January 6th committee. That goes to trial soon. Navarro appears in person. That's just one microcosm, 1 hour of one day where 3 impactful things happen. That's going to be our future over the next few months with 4 different cases happening simultaneously. It also is a calendar dynamic major that could work in the president's favor or in the former president's detriment when so many things are happening simultaneously.
Scott, you're not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer, but we read a great deal of these filings. I read one today from the district attorney responsive to Mark Meadows' request that his case be moved into federal court, saying he was acting under color of his office as chief of staff to the president. The district attorney in Fulton County said, no, you weren't, because you were doing things that were plainly political, which you said are protected by the First Amendment. So therefore, if they're political, they're not part of your duties, because under federal law, under the Hatch Act, you can't act politically. You can only act in the color of your job, which is to carry out governmental responsibilities.
It'd be illegal.
It would be illegal.
Yeah.
So it is an important matter. Having read the district attorney's response, this is going to be a significant look into what the ability of any of the defendants, Mark Meadows, former President Trump, any other, but those 2 in particular, to move this out of the jurisdiction of Georgia.
Jeffrey Clark's going to try the same thing. That Trump administration Justice Department official who was part of the 11th hour attempt to overturn the election results, according to prosecutors, he too is going to try to move that case out of Fulton County. The judge has just scheduled a September 18th hearing on his request. Still has to be processed and booked. Can't forestall that. But all of this speaks to a broader issue. If they change the venue from local court in Fulton County to the federal court, a couple important things change. First of all, the jury pool widens. You get outside of Fulton County, now you have the entire Northern District of Georgia, and of course, it's not incidental, it removes cameras from the dynamic. No cameras in the federal courts. There were clearly going to be cameras in Fulton County.
Because, as we have learned, states do their things differently. Georgia does it differently than neighboring Alabama or Mississippi, or things just a couple of states away. Every state has different approaches to cameras, to processing, mugshots, the necessity thereof. All those sorts of things are playing out. And Scott, I don't mean to stump you, and if I have, forgive me. Just kick me in the shins.
Bring it.
There was a development this week on the documents case in Mar-a-Lago, where there was a reappraisal of some answers given to the special counsel. Can you catch us up on that?
Felt like it was ripped from a Hollywood script major. This 4th Trump employee who is being used by the prosecutors as some evidence that the videos were trying to be deleted. The evidence of moving boxes was sought to be deleted. He's been an impactful witness. He was at first represented by the same defense lawyer representing one of the co-defendants of Donald Trump. When he was before the grand jury, prosecutors say he perjured himself at first. The judge pulled him out of the grand jury room, put him with a public defender from D.C., and after he met with the public defender, that witness asked for a new lawyer, then changed his story, according to prosecutors, and is now a key witness for Jack Smith against the former president and those co-defendants.
How unusual is that scenario? You said possibly ripped from a movie script, but those kinds of things can happen, and procedurally, judges can look out for the best interest of someone appearing before the bench, correct?
And they have to. There is actually an imperative they do so because you can't have a conflict of interest in your defense counsel. You can't have somebody who's conflicted in representing one of the people charged in a case if you're a witness in a case. And that's how it was ironed out. But this type of thing is something you would see, in a movie about the mafia or about gangs. It's just different to hear about it in a political spectrum, and that's where we are.
A political spectrum and the central defendant, the former president of the United States. We can't ever forget that. Scott McFarland, thank you. One day after the first GOP primary debate, Ron DeSantis is in Iowa. We'll break down how donors and supporters are responding to his remarks and presentation Wednesday and the surprising lack of aggressive swings taken at the Florida governor. You're streaming America Decides. Welcome back to America Decides. As we noted at the top of the show, opinions on debate performances can vary, but following what some are calling a disappointing presidential primary debate performance from Ron DeSantis, well, the Florida governor is back on the trail. CBS News politics reporter Aaron Navarro is traveling with the governor in Iowa.
Hello from outside the Field of Dreams here in Dyersville, Iowa, where Governor DeSantis will be holding his first public event since his debate last night. And from talking to donors, strategists, supporters, fundraisers for Governor DeSantis, the theme I got was stasis. If you were someone that believed that Governor DeSantis' message is the strongest part about him, you were probably reassured by last night. Considering he didn't necessarily get attacks from the other candidates and was able to kind of give his direct message without any interruptions, some donors and strategists I talked to were pleased by that. His campaign has been feeling pretty good about it, as well as allies that I talked to, including Ken Cuccinelli, the chair of the super PAC Never Back Down, who I caught up with last night, that said even though he didn't get as much airtime by getting into these attacks, he was able to deliver 100% of his message. Now, on the other side, if you were a donor that was maybe a bit skittish about how DeSantis' campaign has been going, some of the, quote-unquote reset, the staff cuts, the replacement of a campaign manager, and kind of his dwindling lead on the rest of the candidates that aren't named Donald Trump in this field. This debate performance didn't necessarily have a knockout moment that made you think, oh, Governor DeSantis is on the right path of momentum. Some donors I talked to said that he should have maybe talked about Trump a bit more, maybe should have gotten more involved in the kind of crosstalk that was going on in this debate. But voters I talked to tended to lump DeSantis in with other candidates, such as Vivek Ramaswamy or Nikki Haley, when I asked who, the winners to them were in this debate. So, going into this debate, the campaign really wanted to hype up the amount of attacks Governor DeSantis was going to get. That didn't necessarily happen. But on the flip side of that, you don't necessarily have any potential risks for gaffes or him kind of, flailing when another candidate comes to attack him. So a moment of stasis, and Governor DeSantis is moving on right to the next thing right here in Iowa. Major?
Aaron Navarro, thank you. That does it for today. We thank you for watching. You are streaming CBS News.